Koutou, good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's extraordinary council meeting. I'll just open us with a karakia. Ko ranganui ki ronga, ko papatua nuku ki raro, ko tātou ta ere tangata, ki wanganui ti hei mauri ora. Sky Father above, Mother Earth below, all of us in the middle, breath of life. So a very warm welcome here today, and for those of you visiting the new chamber for the first time, welcome as well. The technology in here is very, very good. So we'll head straight into our hearings, and the first speaker that we have today is from Sally Dryland from Federated Farmers, and you are the current acting president. Thanks, Sally. We're all yours. If you can just use that mic, and just noting. Yeah, just noting, just due to illness.
Someone's get the wheels on.
Due to illness, we've got Councillor Kerry Sutherland joining us online.
Okay, kia ora. So I'm Sally Dryland, acting president for the Tararua Federated Farmers, so I don't represent the national body, but I am a volunteer within the local executive. I'd just like to probably highlight within our submissions that we do, they have been put through the membership, which is 260 farming businesses currently, or 261, and they then formed within the executive and run past the national body. So that's how we come to our submissions and the content of it. Often it's quite robust in that there will be varying opinions, but we have to try and come to a consensus, much as the same as council is doing today. So it's not, I suppose I take a bit of herbage with at the moment the current situation where council are reporting on the stats of those in favour and those against, with one submission being one of equal value. We're an organisation as opposed to an individual, and I'd encourage that they are separated out whenever you're talking with the percentages, so that of the 83 submissions that you've had, the individuals are identified as, 70% in favour or whatever, but then the organisations, if it's more 50-50, is acknowledged. Just for future ones, because I don't think it's necessarily an accurate reflection when you say 67% are currently in favour of this proposal to go with Wairarapa. So I don't really want to go through the whole submission again. I'm taking that it's been read and understood, our concerns. There's a lot of things that I really like. I like the fact that it would be like a phone bill or an internet bill from a provider, but I question whether that can't be done within the current organisation as well. I think that the breakdown of the rates that go towards water at the moment are unclear. I appreciate that rural ratepayers are paying 81% of the general rate at the moment. So in my eyes, we're paying more than we should be for a lot of normal council services, and especially when you drop down the uniform annual general charge to the 25%, because that then goes on to the rural weighting. I have one house on my farm. Is it any different from a lifestyle block? We get the same amount of service. We use the road probably about the same amount. I'm conscious that as a farmer I pay more for roading. But I just think that it's an opportunity to make sure that when you separate things out, that it's very clear as to who is contributing what to what. I suppose some red lights came up when I was reading through the consultation documents, or we were, and the 20% of water that is lost currently over the 4 main towns. As a farmer, that wouldn't be acceptable. I fail to see how it can be acceptable to council to not account for 25% of its resource. As I say, I don't want to go through everything. But, you know, 5 million is going to cost you to set up this new organisation, and it would cost you 6.7 million to replace all your earthenware pipes. You know, what's the greatest priority at the moment? It would be nice to get on and get some things done. There's real concern about, from membership, from the point of view of being able to carry 500% of debt. No business in our experience would be seen as viable doing that. And so it's going to cost someone somewhere along the line, and it's, yeah, it would be nice to have something that's more localised, controlled. There's concern from people out at Akatea, Pongaroa, Norsewood and Herbertville as to where they would fall within the system. And, you know, if the new road brings the population that the council are predicting, what will be the impacts on somewhere like Alfredton or Balance? You know, will they need a water system in time? So it's far easier if we can address it locally. Right. We did offer 3 suggestions as to how it could be a greater resilience could be encouraged, and that was a development levy being put in, and especially around every new dwelling having a meter. You know, like it astounds me that we haven't got that. The councils that have put that in have been shown to have a reduced need of water once they are measuring and managing what they've got. The provisions for the stormwater runoff, you know, like the sponge city concepts are quite amazing. I went to one recently up near the Bay of Islands, and not the Bay of Islands, sorry, but Bay of Plenty. But, you know, like the way that the water is recycled, especially with the grey water for the toilets and things like that, is quite astounding, and it gives that an enduring thing into the future. Yeah, why are we building solar farms if we could put a couple of panels on each house or shed? Yeah, there is real concern that we are going to sacrifice a lot of highly productive soils for the provision of energy. So, although we don't support the formation of the Tararua and Wairarapa councils, we are pushing for unilateral councils, and I think one of the advantages of going with some of the other areas for the horizons is that the catchment, we're within the same catchment, got the same rules. You know, like I was speaking to a land manager yesterday who is with Horizons, but because farms fall to Wellington and to Horizons, there's 2 sets of rules for the farmer, and we don't really want that, and that will be a complication if the new entity was to be formed. So has anyone got any questions for me? It's probably...
Thanks, Sally. Do any councillors have normally around questions of clarification on your submission and the points that you've raised? Got anything there?
I think there was one other thing that we raised in the submission, and that was staff member believes that farmers don't pay GST on the rates, and that's why they don't see the impact as being as large. And it was to clarify that on your house and your curtilage, that land isn't exempt from GST. Just as a business thing. It was why someone, Alison, had commented that we didn't pay GST because we got it back. No, not you, sorry. It was a staff member.
Thanks for that. We'll make sure that that information is dispersed so people are clear. I certainly, understand that.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay, no questions for Sally. Thanks, good submission. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, what's the time? I see you all again.
Right on. Okay. Now we don't have Ernie here at the moment, so Brian, are you happy to come up a little bit earlier? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. Obviously, you know who I am. You probably know the parable about Daniel in the lion's den. Well, basically, I'm Daniel at the moment. Right, I'll read this out because otherwise I might get my words a bit mixed up. It is disappointing to see that we are so far into the new venture and generally our Council do not have the answers to the many questions that have been asked. In my view, this is the biggest decision to be made by the Council since the amalgamation. One of the biggest concerns I have is that our asset, valued at $179.241 million, will be given, not sold, to the new CCO with no knowledge of the likely ownership of the asset in the future. Yes, we have been told that we will have shareholdership in the new CCO, but I have seen nothing to suggest that we would retain ownership should the CCO fail or take a change in direction. We were told at the first public meeting that the $41.846 million debt would be paid out to the Council by the new CCO, but this is clearly wrong. This debt will be transferred to the new CCO, still to be paid by the ratepayers, and added to the debt of the other three councils at an estimated debt value of $157.12 million. It was not clearly stated at the public meetings that I attended that all ratepayers would be receiving an annual bill from the new CCO, and I'm still unsure if this would be only urban or also rural ratepayers. This annual bill, I believe, will be in the vicinity of $1,600 per annum, but would be very likely grow as the expected debt the new CCO would grow substantially. I have asked but not received an answer how the stormwater would be separatised from the roading infrastructure. The Council suggested at the public meetings that the new CCO would have greater powers to borrow and greater purchasing powers given the size of the new CCO. In my opinion, bigger companies in this country have not been successful, and I believe this will be the case with this new CCO. I see this new direction as an opportunity for the Council to remove itself from some tough decisions it will have to make in the future. I strongly believe this Council has the ability to maintain option 2, with the right people in the right positions and retaining ownership of one of our most valuable assets. My main concern is that the decision to go with option 1 is set in concrete. I feel the submissions are purely being carried out because of a government requirement to put this out for public consultation. I voted for a council that I believed would maintain our services and protect our valuable assets, not give them away without really knowing the future of them. Thank you for allowing me to speak on my submission. Shoot me.
No one will do that. No one will do that.
Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Brian? Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Thanks very much, Brian. Really appreciate
Cheers.
Your submission and the thought that's gone into it. As part of our process, obviously it's not a time to be debating any of these points, but we do have the opportunity to make sure that we ask of staff for sufficient information before making this really important decision. So you did mention at the start that that you haven't had information that you feel we should have before we make our decision. And I've noted some of those down, but are you able to just really quickly recap, if you were sitting in our position, what is the key bits of information that you would expect to have?
Probably the first and foremost, as far as key aspects, is the future ownership of this asset. because I have asked a question at both of the drop-in meetings I went to. The council appeared to not have the answers, which actually concerned me, because I would have thought if we were going down this rabbit hole that it would be so important to know. We're not giving away 5 cents worth here, it's a huge amount. And we need to know that that asset is retained by the ratepayers who own this. To move it sideways without any known future really is pretty serious. And I would have actually thought, I don't know how much study has been done prior to this, and I would like to think there's been a lot. I would have thought that would have been known by now. There's a whole heap, but I mean, I didn't write them down because I would have been writing it forever and you would have gone to sleep. But seriously, I just think that there's a heck of a lot of unknowns with this here. There was quite a few in my original submission. A lot of unknowns that I'm not sure if you have the answers, and maybe you do, I don't know, but I clearly never got answers to questions, to a lot, I'll rephrase that, to a lot of the questions, because a lot of them we did get eventually. They were slow coming, but we did get them. But there was a lot of questions that we didn't get answered. Okay, yep, that's fine.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and really appreciate that,
Yep.
Brian.
Appreciate your time.
Just to check on our process, for that, we will be getting an officer response to those questions. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
We will. Brian, just in going on, you've given us your top concern. Did you want to give us the top 3, just so that we can, because I do know you have had some answers, but if we can make sure that the office respond. Have you got another couple? Give us your top 3.
I would like to know, actually, stormwater-wise, because this is a part of this infrastructure now, purely because stormwater entails the gutters on the roads, and I would like to know how you are going to anticipate to separatise this here out of this equation. I would assume that you know the answer to that there, given how far down the track we are, or maybe not. That would be another concern, because there's boundaries here that are going to be crossed that I don't quite work out how it's going to happen. Would be another one. Yeah, I'm looking. I'll tell you what, so one other thing I'm going to say is that, because I believe in option 2, because I believe the council have the ability and the powers to be able to run our council as it is. That's my personal thinking. Probably, in my view, we probably have had 1 or 2 people who have tried to run our water service who haven't been, dare I say it, fit for purpose. But I believe that the right people in the right mix, where we're not having to employ consultants all the time at horrendous fees, I think would be so beneficial to the council. That's, yeah, I mean, we have had some good water people, but we have had some that really have not been fit for purpose, as I see it. Okay.
Thanks very much for that. Are there any further questions for Brian? No. Thanks for the
Everyone's
time
happy?
for attending both the drop-in
Yep.
sessions
Yep.
and catching up with staff around that, and
Yep.
for your passion in that place.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay. And no Ernie. Craig, are you happy to come up a little bit earlier as well? Thank you. No, I just had another quick look.
Who knew? Which button, anyone? Oh, it's on. Firstly, I want to thank the council and your worship and Peter Wimsett for allowing us to come and talk today, but also allowing the extension of time for the questions that we had asked. So there's a few of us that asked some questions, for which I'm going to say there, and by and large there is feedback, but not to the point of satisfaction for me, the level of detail, because as you know, sadly I'm a detail person. So I'll get into what I want to talk about today in concert with my submission that I put forward last week. So since lodging my submission, I've had time to reflect on what information I've received from questions raised at the two drop-in sessions, and that hasn't yet to be made available. Some critical questions where answers are yet to be received, given that today is the final hurrah to make any statement and or attempt to impress upon those elected officials that this being the biggest decision for decades, I want to make sure the conscience of all councillors are clear that you have all the necessary information to make the right and informed decision. By electing option 1, you are consigning all current and future generations of ratepayers of this district largely into the unknown, as I see it. And just how that will affect each householder across the Tararua District is also an unknown factor from what I've read. So there's a couple of important questions there that I think I raised with the first drop-in session, Your Worship, and Peter was there, and so was Councillor Long, and Councillor Wallace was there. A sunset clause, or a get-out-of-jail clause, or a pause. I'm not sure. I'm sure you will have the savvy and the understanding that there needs to be something in case there needs to be a back-out. Plan B, up your sleeve. What is Plan B? Is it going back to option 2, or should we just be option 2? On my view for that is, just like Brian, I believe there is some skills, knowledge and experience if we engage the right level and the right people to actually get involved in this, engage the whole town or the whole district. It's got to be a localised thing, I believe. By being pushed away, it could be the death knell on a number of things. That what's next? What's the next big asset that's going to be going that the ratepayers have been paying for 50, 60, 70 years, and all of a sudden the value's not on the balance sheet? That's how I see it. Even though there's a shareholding in the CCO, there is a value to that, but it's on paper. It's not a reality for ratepayers, as I understand it. I've not made a lot of comment on the figures stated from session to session and what I've been provided in writing and what I've read in the documents, because they differed and I didn't know which ones to follow as being accurate. And I guess you, as a body or a group, along with Peter's assistance here, are going through a process of what is accurate, what is right before you move forward. I guess that's the biggest area that until you know your figures, you have to come up with a plan that has a question mark to it. And the figures are the key thing going forward when you've got a district that is probably already under the pump from a financial perspective, looking at the demographic of this town and the other towns of an aged population. So, with that said, I think that my thoughts are around option 2, because I think we still have the people here within the district to do it. I know that there has been a look at the option 1 from the council's perspective, and you've had all the way down the talks within the other councils from South Wairarapa, Carterton and Masterton. I still believe we've got the people in Tararua to actually back ourselves to do a project like this. It was done in the first place way back. I know things have changed, technology and the requirements, and certainly the pressure on from central government. But I think we should still own what we've laid in the ground, basically. One last thing. So, yeah, I'm really interested about the talk that comes back about the giving away of the asset, but there's a shareholding. Shareholding is only as valued as how good the business is going, and because you're a quarter share, whether that's an equal share with the other councils, I'm not sure. So I don't know if that's been ironed out or whether that's just in its infancy. I guess that officials here that have done all the work and done all the reading and consulted with advisors like Peter and co would be best placed to say they've got the information they need, or they still need more information to make a conscious decision. That's where it comes down to for me.
Thanks, Craig. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. And Craig, thanks very much for your detailed submission, your engagement in the process and your follow-up to be getting some of that detailed information. So I really appreciate that. Just one point of clarification to help officers provide us with information. You did mention the figures that you've received, and you said you didn't want to dwell on those, but you were concerned that figures that had been released were perhaps different to figures that you had been provided. Are you able to just give a little bit of clarity for that so we can ask officers to ensure that we have the right information before we make that decision, please?
Certainly. Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. Yeah, I think with the first meeting that we had in the town hall down here, there was a debt amount mentioned around the 40-odd million mark. And I think the second meeting we had 2 or 3 weeks later, there was a figure of 66 million. Now, I've gone and looked at what the next 2 years will look like before the CCO comes into being, I guess, and there's probably $14 to $18 million going to be spent across all the 3 waters across the whole district, as I see it. Now, I'm not a betting man that that'll be locked in stone, because they could change up or down or sideways, right? We've got to be realistic about that. But that's where I was getting to, because then the other figure on the value changes because your debt structure is different, right? So if you lock in your value of your assets, is that cast in stone? Therefore, your debt is the moving target. So, and normally when you've got an asset like that, it's what another council, the other 3 councils are going to accept what your value is and what your value you're putting on it. Is there an outside agency going to actually come up with a formula that you're all going to be happy with? That right?
Perfect. Are there any other questions for Craig? No. And again, thank you for both the sessions and your questions and your interest and the time that you spent with Peter. Really valuable. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And I wish you good luck in coming up with the decision that you have before you, and the robust discussion, no doubt. Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Right, what are we? We're a little bit ahead of time. I can move. Bill, I'll be happy to take you a little bit earlier, or I've also got Julian here if you... Are you happy to take the chair a bit earlier, Bill? No? You can't hear me? Okay. Right. If I just get you to press the little red button in front of you, and then that'll put the mics on so that everybody can hear you in the room and online.
Sorry, Your Worship, I didn't bring my hearing aids, and you don't come across very loud.
Peter tells me off for that too.
Thanks, Sharon. Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to comment on this very important subject. It's probably the biggest decision that this council is going to be involved with since its inception, because this is talking about the very existence of council and the need to have one. I start off by saying, keep it local. Local knows best. And I have another quote which I often use, which is, him who pays the piper calls the tune. As you can appreciate, over my lifetime I've seen a lot of amalgamations. Without exception, the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. And I wish I could explain that in more detail, but time restricts me on that. The amalgamation that we're talking about with this water authority is going to be one, it will be the biggest one that we've been involved with. It's got the potential to be an absolute disaster. I think it's being rushed. And in fact, I know it's being rushed. I'm really disappointed that the local government in New Zealand hasn't looked at the model that we use for roading. The roading model's been going longer than I can remember. It's very fair, and every dollar is put where it should be. There's no administration on top, and it's worked very well. I can't for the life of me understand why it wasn't looked at in this instance. We shouldn't be putting in place new authorities which have the opportunity to siphon off money which should be going to the, in this case, to the water facilities within the district. I think the whole thing's a knee-jerk reaction to the 3 waters, which wasn't acceptable, and in that knee-jerk reaction, they didn't go far enough. They haven't thought it through. It needs more thought. We all know that all existing infrastructure is getting very tired and needs replacing throughout every district in New Zealand. And unfortunately, there was no depreciation planned earlier on, and so that fund has to be met. And it's got to be met probably by loans for future generations. Whatever happens to the water infrastructure, it has to be affordable. I'm not sure that that's the case at the moment with what's planned. There's an elephant in the room which needs addressing. It's not an Asian elephant, it's a big African elephant with 2 tusks, big tusks. And there's one in this district, and throughout New Zealand there are 11. And so that herd of 11 is causing huge destruction in so many ways, and adding cost and extra pressure on councils in making that group happy. You may, most of your council probably are aware that the late Don Stevens and I were elected to be the first Tararua reps when the regional council was set up. And at that time, it was very clear that the government set up regional councils so they could be the bad cops and the regional council and the government be the good cop. And they've done that very well. Started off, of course, with catchment boards and responsible for soil and water. Now there are plenty of instances where they can't even manage the water properly if it was put to the common sense test. And unfortunately, Horizons are not accountable to anyone. I'll repeat that. They're not accountable to anyone. The government is more accountable than the regions. And yet we pay for their existence, we pay for their high-spec 4x4s, we pay for them to build new buildings so they can employ more staff, we pay for them to provide buses with no one riding. There's a whole lot of things we pay for which we don't benefit. One of the reasons that water management become unaffordable is as a direct result of the ridiculously high standards being imposed on all water systems. They're becoming unaffordable, and I give an example which you're all familiar with, is for example, the Ekatahuna wastewater review that took place. In the eyes of the authority, it needed doing. Who was going to pay for it wasn't their problem. And that's the sort of thing that happens without community involvement and a bit of common sense. Our drinking water standards are ridiculously stringent, which in turn has developed a population with no resistance, indirectly putting extra pressure on our health system. It just goes on and on. In my opinion, any water authority stretching from Northwood to Ngāwee would be an absolute disaster. It would include 2 regional councils, and the money that the government have promised would be used initially as a setup for the new administration and the hardware that they need to run that organisation. The practicality, of course, of something as big as that is hard to imagine, but it certainly wouldn't be in the best interest of Tararua, in my opinion. As to the notion that the local staff would carry on in their local areas, that doesn't necessarily happen, and Tararua itself has in fact contracted out its services, and so the people that are doing that work aren't necessarily familiar with the water systems within the various districts. Even though common sense has prevailed with the changes to the proposed 3 waters idea, we need to get alongside iwi in getting their buy-in to an affordable and common sense program, which they too can afford. This has not always been the case, and you'll see right at this time the South Island iwi have taken a court case to be able to control all the water in the South Island. Now, if Ngā Tahu are successful with that, that will obviously be the case for the rest of the country in due course, and so our discussions today would be a complete waste of time. We need to rethink on what is acceptable to our ratepayers, and for example, is it necessary to have water notices constantly when there's no real threat? Up until now, ratepayers have not been given the options or trade-offs associated with the water quality, and at the time they did have a say. I think as part of the submission of mine, it's really I'm probably looking back rather than forward, because it really bothers me that what we're talking about putting in place is not going to be workable, and we're going to find ourselves in a wee while in a very difficult situation. So I just repeat what I said at the start, really. I think the important thing is that whatever happens, it's affordable. At the moment, New Zealand, and it's not only New Zealand, but we here are in a situation where we're finding it very hard to standard of living, and we are not able to continue to pay some of the costs that are being imposed upon us. So we need to consider that. So I think the most important thing, in my view, is to keep it local. Local knows best. I think the other thing that probably, and this is a bit of a sideline, but I think that the councils need to encourage people to, the councils to put in the meters and encourage people to put in tanks, so there's a conservation and a reduction in the wastage and the problems that causes. I think the other thing that needs to happen is someone needs to shoot the elephant. Well, that's been, it's not helping my discussion and it hasn't helped one way or the other as far as the options go. I don't think we should have options at this stage. I think we need to talk. We need to be talking to the government, and all councils should be getting together to talk about what other options are available. And I'll be interested to know why we haven't gone down the road like the roading policy, because that's worked so well. I note with interest Fielding, Manawatu are looking to go on their own because their standards are they've done the hard yards. The whole thing, it's a dog's breakfast, to be quite honest. And I don't know whether we're too late to do anything, but if councils got together, having had the submissions and had discussions with the ratepayers, there'll be enough doubt that perhaps there'll be a second thought by the government as to how they handle it going forward. I've probably had my 10 minutes.
We were ahead of time, Bill, and it was great to hear some of those past reflections. You know, you were there at the outset, so that has been really insightful. Does anyone have any questions for Bill while he's here? Councillor Long.
Bill, thank you very much for your submission. Bill, are you option 1 or option 2 here, please?
I'm in a quandary. The government says I have to be option 1.
What are you?
But I'm option 2. But I'm not option 2 on my own. I have to have support from other councils because I think, I don't know what the Wairarapa think about all this, but if you get in the car and drive from Ngāwee to Northwood, it's a blimmin' long way. And I don't know, Marston certainly don't need us. And we don't need Marston. They've got their problems too, although they're working on it. The money's raised in the district and it should be able to be spent in the district. And if there's some support from government based on some methodology, like the roading money, that should be enough to help those districts get through their program and update their water systems. Yes, to answer to your question, I am the keep it local. Yeah.
Thanks. Councillor Gilmore.
Okay, best of luck, guys. You're going to need it.
Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it, and we appreciate you travelling all the way over today.
Thank you.
Good. Enjoy a look around. Right, we are a little bit ahead of time. Susan, we can either take your submission now, or if you want time just to sit down and take a couple of minutes, I could move on to Julian if you'd like. Yep. Okay. Julian, are you happy to come up a little bit earlier? Thanks.
Could I have a drink of water, please? My voice may not hold out.
See that? I jumped.
Thank you, my friends. My name is Julian McKean. I'm a child of this district. I was born in Hospital Street in 1957, and I'm 67 years old now. Yeah, going on 68. And I'm here to talk about culture. Oh, culture. Culture is made up of the word cult. And a cult is where you give up your independent thinking to something else you think is bigger than you. You imagine it's more clever than you, it has more ideas than you. And so you stop thinking for yourself and you just do what you're told, really. It's kind of programming. So the reason I want to talk about culture is because of this man, William Edward Stemming, an American statistician from, he was born in 1900 and he died in 1999, so he was 99 years old. And he was a master of statistics, numbers, and he didn't invent quality control and quality assurance, but he progressed it, no doubt. He progressed it. And he wrote this book in 1982. He wrote other things as well, of course. He was a very generous man. He was generous with his knowledge and understanding of how things worked in a very complicated and dangerous world in America during the Second World War. He helped American industry create reliability, predictability, and safety. Well, he was mostly concerned with the production of weapons, mind you, during the Second World War. Mass production, quality control. So that the result would meet the purpose it was designed to meet. And with great assurance, quality assurance, so we could have confidence. He was only one man, and he only did what he could do to produce a quality culture in American business. And mostly he was not listened to. Mostly he was not listened to. And so the corruption in American business went on, of course. The abuse in American business went on, and the wasteful practices went on, and the loss of confidence went on amongst the working people in America. They lost their confidence in their leaders. And this is what culture can do. This is what culture does do. It's human behavior, human nature, we all say. I'm one, I'm culty. I have the cult of Dannevirke in me. Hospital Street, Oh yeah, really important, maybe. But we've got to instill a culture of wiseness, wisdom and sensibleness in this organisation. I'm saying you guys, and especially you, Mr. Nicholson, especially you. For the last few days, I've been running around in my head trying to think of what to say to you all. I need to explain that I worked for the council from 2007 until 2014. That's 7 years of my life. I started when I was about 50 years old. And I studied at Dannevirke High School, got a brilliant science kind of education, science side education, but I learned French and a brilliant education at Dannevirke High School. And then not really knowing what the hell to do, my farmer dad said, well, you fix the motorbikes and the tractors, why don't you study engineering? So off to Auckland Engineering School. And after too many years, I got a degree in mechanical engineering. Just passed it. I wasn't a brilliant mechanical engineer. But I was suitable to engineering because I'm practical. I'm a practical person. And we need practicality. We need basic, back to basics, practicality. And I'm expecting it all of you people, but I'm willing to help. I'm just a ratepayer who knows what I know. I'm in my own little rabbit hole cult. I don't know what you know. I know some of the complications. 7 years I worked for this council, everybody. 7 years. I didn't, at first, Chris Southgate had to tell me what funding depreciation was. I didn't know what it was. And then about only 3 years later, I was introduced to the database that runs the assets. All $1 billion worth of them in this little old district here. All in a database of massive complication. And every year we capitalised the year's work into it and calculated another value, and then this, spreadsheet upon spreadsheet would work out the funding for depreciation of all those assets based on age, material, location, and so on. So you have a system, and actually I'm for option one. I didn't say that on my submission form, but I am for option one. You people are the experts in your system. I'm one of you. I'm pretty expert. I know all of the systems that you know. They're just engineering systems. This is an engineering problem, first and foremost, and it can be solved. The affordability of water services in this district can be solved, and it must be solved very, very quickly, because while you delay decisiveness, and this document is indecisive, highly indecisive and ambiguous. It's not good work. It's not good work. By the staff, it's not good work, and I'm saying that. So I didn't want to get too emotional about it, but I mean, as Tracy said, it's an existential situation for us all. It's our existence at stake. It's life and death for our little society here and down in Ekatahuna, up on Topgrass Road and in Norsewood. I know you take it seriously, and I don't doubt you. I don't doubt you. So what I'm calling for is for you to transform your organisation, Mr. Nicholson, to one that respects quality assurance. Because it's your job. It's your job to lead it and be it, walk it and talk it. And the results, it's personal. It is personal. When the results lead us to a situation where we're so at sea with a decision that we don't have any confidence in ourselves, we don't know which way to go, we're responding to outside regulations and so on. We don't have the confidence, and we are the experts. We are the only people who know this system. So be joyous about that. I am. I love the idea that the Pongaroa water supply starts where I used to live. I absolutely love that. It's terrific. So, and it still works, and it still supplies Pongaroa, I'm pretty sure, and they can flush their toilets out there. And, you know, it's only an engineering issue. So I'm going to end up repeating myself, and I've probably had whatever number of minutes. Just let me check my notes, because I did make a few. Where's my glasses? Value for money. Value for money. I used to work in drainage. So on a shovel, you know, actually at the end of the trench with a pick, trying not to hit the fibre optic cables in the street. Okay? So, and you hired me, you people, well, no, your predecessors hired me to look after the upgrade of this main street, which I did for the first 3 years. It was a tremendous experience, which I'm very grateful for. And we came in on budget. I'm proud of that. We were late on time because the contractor was not quality assured. They didn't have quality control culture. They had an angry kind of confrontational type of culture. That's the kind of culture they had. They had a fear-driven culture. Fear. And that's not quality assurance. So until you can learn about QA, obviously the results of whatever decision you make in a month could be anything. So I can't really, well, what else did I say? No, that's all I want to say. It's probably too much already.
We're right on time.
Thank you for listening.
We're right on time for that. Thanks, Julian. Does anyone have any questions for Julian at all? No? Thank you very much for coming in. Oh, sorry, Councillor Johns, you've got one. Apologies.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Just one. Thanks, Julian, for that. I take it from what you're saying that you believe that option one will provide better quality assurance.
No. I'm sorry. No.
So what's your reason for option one?
Just that you are the experts in your system. Your staff know this system and nobody else does. So, you know, you'll get no help from Masterton until they get to, you know, they have to go through a whole learning process, don't they? Very complicated. These things are complicated. You've got one town here, you've got Woodville down there, you've got Akatea, you've got They're all separate. We should be masters of Dannevirke, because we're all here, or a lot of us are here, probably not everyone, of course, but the council is based here, and you should be masters of the Dannevirke systems. Anyway, I've said enough, and I think you get my drift.
Yeah. No,
I
we've
can
got
help if you want to go this way. This way.
Okay.
This way. Not,
Yeah.
in other words, change
Julian,
your culture.
got one.
And it's not a small thing. It's a massive thing.
Okay.
But we're in a massive crisis.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Julian.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. Right, we are right back on time. Susan, are you ready? Thank you.
This is getting to be a habit. Yeah. Kia ora, Your Worship, elected members and everyone else. I submitted that I supported option 1, and there's a number of reasons for that, but then there's also loads of questions. I actually spent the morning massaging mothers and who had young babies today as part of the Pepe Ora program with Rangatani. And you wonder, what are they going to inherit as they grow up? As some of those mothers become homeowners, what happens with them? But there's a digression. I've been in two minds about this. I understand having control of the situation would be keep it in-house. But then you see little wee fine print in the submission, consultation document about that if council kept it to themselves, that puts it at risk of paying higher premium on interest rates, which if you then have to get a credit rating, that would almost imply that the credit rating wouldn't be very high, hence the premium in the interest rate. So, I'm risk adverse, I don't like a lot of debt. So, does this mean that with the moving to a CCO that you'll be able to say, oh, goody, 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 we've got a potential for higher debt, and then go above the 135 million that's already implied in the long-term plan, that this will be your wish list? And then how does that affect our water rates? The other question I had, that if we go over to the CCO, what happens to our TDC rates? How much do they reduce? Does all water costs go? And then will you look at your debt cap? Will you look at the percentage that you're allowed under Section 21 of the Ratings Act, which is currently 30%? And how close to that ceiling are you going to get from the UAGC costs or income? And then with that, with the rate you say water does go, what are our rates going to look like? What is going to be the focus of the council? Just roading, parks and rec? Or is it going to be more, we'll go and titivate the streets a bit more, or put on some frilly things? Or are we going to get back to basics on the stuff that we need? Why the reliance on NZTA at 73 cents in the dollar for roading? Can we reduce that and pay more into that? Because you just need someone like Donald Trump getting in, and the whole economy can go to custard. We've got a general election next year, when this is going to be new if you have the CCO. What's going to happen then? Who is going to be vying for positions on the board on the new CCO? And what are their credentials? Are they water orientated, or are they just governance experienced? It does mean, however, that we are going to be landed as ratepayers with two lots of rates, TDC, Horizons, plus a water bill. And I found this document, which Julian has already mentioned was a wee bit ambiguous. Again, this, I don't know if it's muddying the waters or trying to lead us to actually come into the preferred option. But when you start using GST exclusive figures on page 9, and then on page 22, you've got GST inclusive, how transparent is that? People won't always read the fine print. They'll just say, oh, an average of 922 is the water connection on page 9, and think that's it. Now add on another 15%. And the averages, you are putting it across the district. Why not have the averages per township for Dannyburg, Northwood, Ekatahuna, Pahiatua? Because that's where the main water costs are coming from, and they're the ones that are going to be mainly paying for it. So why not break it down to township? Why average it? Because to get the average, we know some are paying way more and some are paying way less. And unless people go back to basic maths and think about that, they'll think, oh, I'm just paying that amount, when they could be doing a lot more. I can also understand why you are looking at working with the southern councils as opposed to Palmerston North. You know, we do now become a bigger fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a bigger pond. But how the other councils feel with our big $135 million list of jobs to do when they may have something smaller. I understand Featherston Water is actually another big area that needs improving. Then it comes into the practical operating costs of this new CCO. The rating systems, there's generally 2 rating systems on the computers. One's Magic, I'm not sure who the other one is. Not every council uses the same one. So which councils are going to change so it's consistent right across the board in the new CCO? What's that going to cost, or are the details still to come out? What are we opening ourselves up for? It may be a win-win for councils, and you get the economies of scale and this, that, the next thing. But it would also be nice to be a win-win for ratepayers. I just want you to leave you with a quote that if we keep things in-house, there is a saying that past behaviour is the best indicator of future behaviour. So what is that future for our water going to look like if we keep it in-house? Because the mismanagement, we all know about the impound supply, but you know, what's it going to be like? We've had numerous water and infrastructure managers come and go in the last few years. Where's the stability? And can we actually trust any outcome if it is kept in-house? Because there's a lack of trust in the community. There's a cry that, oh, we're being transparent, but there's still lots of things that aren't even being shown in the documents. We're just talking about water, but we're not talking about what happens next if it goes. What do rates look like? What is the focus of our council? Can I just leave those with you?
Thanks, Susan. Does anyone have any questions for Susan? Yep, Councillor Gilman.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. And Susan, you never fail to disappoint with a detailed submission, and thank you for adding so much more to that in your talk. Could I just double check where you stand now on considering it? Your submission indicated that you support option 1. I just want to. Clearly, there's some questions and reservations that you started your discussion with, but if you were sitting in this seat, would option one be what you would choose?
I would still choose option one. I believe that we don't necessarily have the skill set of the staff to actually manage it appropriately. We were promised repairs that never happened. We've had inconsistencies with managers. So in a way it is passing the buck to the CCO, but then they've also got 3 other councils that they are having to work with, so their skill set ideally or hopefully would be way better and more in line with making this work and be successful for all councils involved.
Thanks. So there's anything further questions for Susan? And I have noted your questions. There was one I missed, but Ellie will capture that and we'll make sure that those are answered for you. Okay. Thanks so much. Okay. Right on time, I think. Yep, nearly. Right. Evan, are you ready to present to us? I know we're a little bit early, but yep, you're ready to go. Fantastic to have you here.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, councillors. I've come along today out of political retirement, or political hiding perhaps, to state my position on the proposed water amalgamations. I'm firmly against them. I see them as basically the first step towards water privatisation. At the moment, we have complete control over our water resources. If we join with others and amalgamate them all into a company, we move from that position of total control to just being a minor shareholder. I believe the separation of our water assets from our councils and the formation, as I said, into a private company is step one towards privatisation. For those of you who are old enough to remember the 1989 local government reforms, you should recall how many councils then were forcibly amalgamated. Previously, autonomous communities found that they had then lost control of their own destinies. At the same time, the government was forming our productive government departments into SOEs, state-owned enterprises. All of these were soon privatised with significant job losses and the loss of major government income streams. As part of the local government reforms, the national government, not party, but national government, also required councils to follow the same process. Councils' productive departments, power distribution, gas distribution, works departments, for examples, were reformed as LATEs, local authority trading enterprises. And within a short time, these too were all privatised, leading to many local job losses and a loss of income for councils, which had always been there as a control on rates. When you lose your income, you only have rates left as a sole source of income. There is no amalgamation anywhere within the country that has worked in favour of the local people. One huge example of a recent amalgamation that has failed dismally is the formation of the Greater Auckland Super City. 10 city councils were formed into the one super city. Just as your consultation document here highlights significant savings for us in the future, the Auckland people were given the same sort of information, that the super city would save them a lot of money through economies of scale, bulk buying, and being able to dispense with a lot of services that were replicated across the 10 cities. However, it was less than a year into amalgamation that those savings were shown as being pure fiction. Costs in all the areas increased substantially. The bureaucracy increased in size, and people found that their former city now had little influence over the overall super city direction, let alone over what was happening in their own community. I've previously said that water privatisation could not happen until everybody had had water meters installed at the public expense. And we are now in the situation this has happened. Every new premise automatically is built with a water meter, and most older premises have all had their old Tobies replaced with water meters as just part of the standard ongoing maintenance and water piping upgrades. Yes, so I believe that putting our eggs into one basket by joining up with others and forming a separate company, we are abandoning our control over our future. As a minor shareholder, we will not be able to say nay if anything ever happens to move towards privatisation. And that has been a global trend too, wherever this sort of process has been followed. I think that's about all I have to say. I do not agree with this amalgamation.
Thanks, Evan. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Evan, thanks for coming in and for travelling in. I always enjoy your insight whenever we have discussions, and today's no exception, so thank you. I know one of your concerns, and it's not your only concern, but is about that step towards privatisation as you see it. Would you feel more comfortable with option one, so the joint CCO approach, if there were specific protections built in that makes privatisation impossible? Would that give you comfort, or?
No, because I believe that if we did that, we've still started on the process, and any legal blockage to privatisation is a simple law change away. And we see that happen with so many laws.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Evan? No? Okay. Thanks so much, Evan. We'll make sure that some of that's as addressed as we can. Thank you. We are due, so Grant is not here and neither is Dom, so we might just adjourn until, what have we got? We adjourn till 2:40, and if Grant comes in earlier we can start up again then. Okay, thanks councillors. We've got a couple of minutes break. Right. Okay, team, we have our last two speakers here. Right, thanks, team. We've got our last two speakers here, so I'd just like to welcome Grant Marlowe up. And just when you come up, Grant, if you press the little button at the front, that'll just put the speaker on so that everybody can hear you and online. Submission number 69. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk to you about this. I'm totally against joining with Masterton, South Wairarapa and that sort of thing. And I honestly thought we would have learnt by now that amalgamation does not work. It never worked when we went from borough councils to district councils. The amount of assets that have just been sold out to pay for everything to continue the councils is, ridiculous. I've looked at some of your statistics and that sort of thing on here, and there's things like the amount of water we use. You've quoted that as being like, is it 317 litres or something average per person, which is higher than the national average in that. If you take away the 26% leakage that you have, that drops that down to 240 something. That's below, what the others are using, and, not the lowest, but it's below. And the fact that you're going to sell our assets to pay for this, to go into, conjunction with another council, and that what will we have left once you do that? When there's future crises and things like that, what do we have left to work with? I thought you would have learnt by now that selling everything off we own to pay for bills and things like that doesn't work. I believe if you actually spoke to your ratepayers and said to them, look, we're going to have to cut all services to get on top of this so we can get through it, that I'm sure you're going to have people that are not going to be happy about it, but the majority of people, rather than have a huge increase in their rates, would be prepared to go without services. You're not going to please everybody. But there's got to be another way other than amalgamating with Marston. I do not believe they will do the right thing by us. And we will be outvoted on several different things. It's probably all I've got to say, but thank you for the opportunity to say it.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks for taking the time to both submit and come and share your views on that. Does anyone have any questions for Grant around that? Okay. No.
And this doesn't affect me. I have rural properties. I'm not even in town, but I do have a property right by Eketahuna Water Catchment Area, boundaries the council here. And from what I've seen, the way you have treated that river, and the Eketahuna Water Collection Area is pretty disgusting. The harvesting of the trees that was done there, all the slash left behind, the silt that's getting into the Eketahuna water supply because of the contractor you used, didn't really know what he was doing. And now someone's been up there and diverted the tracks, the top tracks, so the water all comes into where your property meets my property, where there's no silt traps. So it's all coming down and then going into the Eketahuna water supply. And the fact that there's no signage up there to keep people out. This is where people's drinking water comes from. I've shown Tracy photos of dead animals in there, and no one seems to care about it. But thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Grant. Right. Don, welcome. Good to see you again.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Don Cameron from Pahiatua. My submission is obviously there's only to me one option you have, and that's to give you some affordability, and that's to join with other councils, and you're joining with Wairarapa. To me, there's still a problem though with small populations. So you're looking at 70,000 people in total, 23,350 water connections, 23,350 wastewater connections, but there are 15 water plants and 13 wastewater plants for a very small number of users. That's always going to be a problem. The original Three Waters plan introduced by the previous government began with 4 entities. The reason was that each had around about 1.2 million users, including cities, to spread the cost relatively evenly to make it affordable for rural councils with multiple plants to serve small numbers. Because that is where the wealth is generated, even the government realised that. But one thing I'll just go back to Victoria and Australia, where I did have quite a lot of interest in what was happening in Tasmania, mainly because I had family living there, and we went over there 3 times, and my son-in-law was the CEO of Tas Racing, and they were severely affected by water shortages, to the point they actually changed to artificial turf to race on, because they weren't allowed to use irrigation. So it gives you an idea. So the Victoria government introduced a scheme for Tasmania in about 2008. It has 29 shires, so it's a lot of small councils with a population of around 574,000. There's 221,000 water connections and about 11,400 kilometres of water and sewer mains. 3 shires regularly ran out of water, and 7 were on semi-permanent boil water notices throughout the whole year. None of the wastewater plants discharged to land, and with around half the plants exceeding their consents. So they weren't operating under regulatory consent. But in 2008, Tasmania agreed to operate their 3 waters under 4 corporations, 3 regional corporations, and a shared service business owned by the 3 for the actual operation. And I happened to be over there when that occurred. And the same arguments arose from ratepayers that we've heard here: loss of ownership of assets, a remote governance, and the introduction of an Aboriginal oversight board as wastewater plants would be upgraded to discharge to land. And we can remember the governance issues around that and the original one that the government put out. So between 2009 and 2013, $2 billion worth of water and sewage assets were transferred from the 29 shires to the 4 corporations, including 615 staff. And over this period, 54,000 water meters were installed and introduced a new billing system and agreed to work with prioritised work to satisfy the regulators. So they dropped their argument around who should be first. It was simply what had to be done for the regulator to start with. But in 2013, the 4 business entities merged into one, known as Taswater, and the Victoria State Government's become a shareholder in 2019. Now, I actually rang a friend over there to find out what's going on. He has a bit of an understanding. He understands all water plants have been upgraded with no boil water notices, and water conservation and reuse of water has allowed supply to cater for demand, so virtually they do not run out of water. Taswater is upgrading wastewater plants to discharge to land. I don't have information on their progress, but I gather there's something like 22 plants are now discharging to land. And that's mainly because they were actually polluting their rivers with the overflow. They did not have much. We do have filters and filtration systems and aerobic ponds. They were just discharging straight to the river in many instances. But it's a model I think New Zealand could be moving to. Numbers matter. That's simple. I'd expect the CCO operating the Wairarapa, Tararua, Three Waters to be looking for opportunities to join other adjoining CCOs at least for further efficiencies, cost control, and use of expertise in workforce development. The CCOs must show the government and future governments they are capable of running the enterprise without government interference or threat of amalgamation of councils, and that is a real threat. A real threat. Ratepayers need to see real cost savings, and the regulatory demands of Taumata Arawai have to be met. So that's where I come from. I have to say, and the Mayor probably understands that, I'm pretty passionate about the Three Waters. Starting 20 odd years ago, when we could see we could not afford the Three Waters at a rural council level. And so we started in repair very early to start upgrading, but we could apply to funding because we had tourism. Tonga didn't qualify, and so they're now way behind. All the other towns right here, Okuni, Oponga, all those towns have been upgraded because of money coming from the government. Unfortunately, that's not here now. It could come back. Talking to a couple of ministers through another job I have, they are keen to see that revived. But yeah, I think it's political. The wish is not there politically, nor is there money. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Don. Really appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Don?
Might have to put your race courses into turf shortly.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, councillors. Now, Ngāti Kahalunu ki Tamaki Rua have advised that they don't wish to speak to their submission, so we'll just leave that one as read. If I move back to the agenda, we have got the item there, hearing of submissions on local water done well consultation. So I'll take that report as read and then just quickly run through the conclusion unless anyone's got any questions, just so that submitters that are here know the process for that. So obviously today the purpose of the meeting was to hear those submitters that wish to be heard, and then following that, deliberations on the matters raised by submitters will be undertaken by the council at its meeting on the 28th of May. The decision on the future of water management for the Tararua District will be made by council at an extraordinary meeting on the 11th of June 2025. And just noting that we have a tight time frame to comply with to meet the government's requirements for local water done well. By the 3rd of September 2025, the council must have completed a community consultation on its proposal, decided on the future water management for the Tararua District, and adopted a water services delivery plan and be submitted to the government. So did Brian or any officers have any comment on that, or councillors have any queries on that report? No. Okay, that's fine. Can I have somebody move that the recommendation that we receive the report from the manager concerning the hearings today? Moved by Councillor Franklin. Can I have a seconder? Moved by Councillor Petty-Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. That brings us to the conclusion of today's meeting, and I thank the submitters very much for their time and allowing us to hear from you and hear those concerns. We look forward to a report coming back from officers answering those questions that we received today and those that will follow from councillors too. So thank you very much for your interest in an incredibly important topic with water. So with that, I'll close us with a karakia for the day. Let the winds of the Ruahine and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you. For we are the Pounamu of Te Tāpiri Nui o Whātonga. Kia ora.